My name is Dorothy Jenkins, and I'm 65 years old. I've been a grandmother for 7 years, but I've been raising my grandson Marcus full-time for the past 3. When his mother, my daughter Keisha, went to prison for possession with intent to distribute, I became a mother again at 62. Except this time, I was doing it without the energy of youth. Without the financial cushion I never had the first time around. And without the naive belief that love alone can fix everything. I work nights as a nursing assistant at a rehabilitation center. The pay is barely enough to cover rent, utilities, food, and Marcus's endless growing out of shoes and pants. I sleep in shifts between 7 a.m. and 2 p.m. Wake up to get Marcus off the school bus, help with homework I don't always understand. Make dinner from whatever's cheapest at the store, put him to bed, and then head back to work. It's a hamster wheel that runs on coffee, prayer, and the stubborn refusal to let this child become a statistic. Marcus is 8. He's quiet in a way that worries, may not shy, but watchful, like he's waiting for the next bad thing to happen. When Keisha went away, he cried for 2 weeks straight and then just stopped. Stopped crying. Stopped talking much. Started having nightmares he wouldn't tell me about. The school counselor said it was trauma, gave me a pamphlet about childhood grief, and suggested therapy we couldn't afford. I do what I can. I make sure he eats breakfast. I check his homework. I read to him before bed even when my eyes won't focus and the words blur together. I tell him his mama loves him, which is true even if she has a terrible way of showing it. I tell him he's smart, he's kind, he's going to be okay. I tell myself the same things and hope repetition makes them true. School has always been hard for Marcus. Not because he isn't bright, he is, in ways that surprise me. He can take apart a broken radio and explain what each piece does. He can remember every dinosaur name and fact from the library books we borrow. But reading? Math worksheets. Sitting still while the teacher talks. Those things feel impossible for him. And I've watched him shut down more and more as the year progresses. His second grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson, was kind but overwhelmed. 30 kids in one classroom, half of them dealing with their own traumas and not enough hours or resources to reach everyone. She'd write notes on Marcus's papers. Needs to focus. Incomplete work. Please practice at home. I'd try. We'd sit at the kitchen table, me fighting to stay awake, him fighting to care. Both of us frustrated and guilty in equal measure. Third grade started in September with a new teacher, Ms. Reese, young, maybe late 20s. White woman with dark curly hair and kind eyes and an energy that seemed impossible to sustain. At the first parent-teacher conference, she shook my hand with both of hers and said, "Mrs. Jenkins, I'm so glad to meet you. Marcus is a wonderful kid." I waited for the but. There's always a but. "But he's struggling," she continued gently. "I'd like to work with you to figure out how to help him succeed. Can we set up a time to talk more in depth?" We scheduled a meeting for the following week. I arrived straight from my shift, still in my scrubs, smelling like antiseptic and exhaustion. Ms. Reese had made coffee. She poured me a cup without asking, added sugar without me telling her I needed it, and sat across from me like we had all the time in the world. "Mrs. Jenkins," she began, "Marcus is struggling with reading comprehension and written expression. But I don't think it's a lack of intelligence. I think he might have a learning difference that's making school harder than it needs to be. Have you ever had him tested for dyslexia or ADHD?" I shook my head. "We don't have insurance that covers that kind of thing. And even if we did, I wouldn't know where to start." "I understand," she said. "Let me see what I can do. In the meantime, I'd like to try some accommodations in the classroom, extra time on assignments. A quiet corner when he needs to reset, graphic organizers for writing. Would that be okay?" "Yes," I said, my throat tight. "Thank you. Mrs. Jenkins," she added softly. "I know you're doing this alone. I know you're working nights. I know you're exhausted. You're doing an incredible job. Marcus is lucky to have you." I cried in my car in the school parking lot for 10 minutes before I could drive home. Over the next few months, Ms. Reese did things no teacher had ever done. She called me once a week, not to complain, but to update me on Marcus's progress, She sent home books she thought he'd like, graphic novels with pictures that told the story even when the words were hard. She'd let him draw his answers sometimes instead of writing them. She learned that he loved dinosaurs and started incorporating them into math problems. If a triceratops eats 12 pounds of plants a day, how many pounds does it eat in a week? Marcus started smiling again. Not all the time, but enough that I noticed. He'd come home and tell me about something funny, Ms. Reese said. Or a project they were doing, or how he got to be the line leader because he used kind words, small things. Everything things. In November, Ms. Reese called and asked if we could meet again. My heart sank. Here it comes, I thought. The call where they tell me he's too far behind, too disruptive, too much. I met her after school on a Friday. Marcus was in the library with the after-school program, drawing dinosaurs on scrap paper. Ms. Reese had that same coffee waiting, that same warm smile, but her eyes were serious. "Mrs. Jenkins," she said, "we need to talk." My chest tightened. What happened? Is Marcus okay? He's fine, she said quickly. Better than fine, actually. But I need to tell you something, and I hope you'll hear me out. I nodded, gripping my coffee cup like a lifeline. I've been teaching for 7 years, she began. I've had a lot of students. Some I remember more than others. But Marcus, he's special. Not because he's perfect, he's not, and neither is any child. But because, despite everything he's been through, he shows up. He tries. He's kind to other kids, even when they're not kind to him. He asks questions about the world that remind me why I became a teacher in the first place. I blinked back tears. Thank you. That means I'm not finished, she interrupted gently. Mrs. Jenkins, I reached out to a few colleagues and friends. There's a nonprofit in the city that provides free psychoeducational testing for kids who qualify based on income. I submitted an application on Marcus's behalf with your permission retroactively. I hope that's okay. They accepted him. He can be tested for learning disabilities at no cost to you. I stared at her. Why would you do that? Because he deserves it, she said simply. And because you deserve support. You're doing the work of 2 parents and a full-time job, and you shouldn't have to navigate the system alone. When I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They have an opening next month. I'll drive him there and back if you can't take off work. I'll sit with him during the testing if he's nervous. Whatever you need, cried. Right there in her classroom, surrounded by alphabet charts and motivational posters. I cried like I hadn't cried since the day they took Keisha away in handcuffs. Ms. Reese handed me tissues and didn't say anything. Just let me fall apart in a way I couldn't afford to do anywhere else. When I could finally speak, I said, Why? Why are you doing all this? She looked at me for a long moment. Because I was Marcus once, she said quietly. Not the same circumstances. But I had ADHD that no one caught until I was in high school. I struggled for years thinking I was stupid, lazy, broken. And then one teacher, Mr. Alvarez, 10th grade English, saw me. Really saw me. He got me tested. He advocated for accommodations. He changed my life. And I promised myself that if I ever became a teacher, I'd be that person for someone else. Marcus is my someone else. The testing happened in December. I took the day off work, losing a day's pay I couldn't afford to lose. But some things matter more than money. Ms. Reese met us at the clinic. Marcus was nervous, chewing his lip the way he does when he's trying not to cry. Ms. Reese knelt down to his level and said, Hey, buddy, you're going to answer some questions and do some puzzles. Some will be easy, some will be hard. The point isn't to get everything right. The point is to help us understand how your amazing brain works so we can help you learn better. Okay? Okay, Marcus said, his voice small. He was in there for 3 hours. Ms. Reese and I sat in the waiting room. She graded papers. I dozed off twice and woke up embarrassed, but she just smiled and said, You work nights. Sleep is medicine. When the evaluator finally came out, she had Marcus with her. He looked exhausted, but okay. She asked to speak with me privately. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Jenkins, Dr. Patel said gently, Marcus has dyslexia and ADHD. Both are moderate to severe. That means school has been significantly harder for him than it should be. The good news is that with the right intervention, specialized reading instruction, occupational therapy, medication if you choose, he can absolutely succeed. He's a very bright child. His brain just works differently. I absorbed this dyslexia, ADHD, words I'd heard but didn't fully understand. What do I do? I asked. First, we'll send this evaluation to the school. They're required to provide accommodations through an IEPN, Individualized Education Plan. Ms. Reese can help you navigate that process. Second, I'm referring you to a few resources. She handed me a folder bursting with pamphlets. These are organizations that provide free or low-cost tutoring, therapy, and support groups for parents. You're not alone in this. Ms. Reese helped me schedule the IEP meeting. She explained every acronym, every right I had, every question I should ask. When the meeting happened in January, she sat next to me and advocated for Marcus like he was her own son. The school agreed to everything: specialized reading instruction 3 times a week, extended time on tests, a quiet space for breaks, a seat near the teacher, assignment modifications. This is legally binding, Ms. Reese explained afterward. If the school doesn't provide these services, you can file a complaint. I'll help you hold them accountable. Marcus started his interventions in February. The reading specialist, Mrs. Kim, was patient and creative. She used colored overlays and audiobooks and games that made decoding words feel less like torture. The occupational therapist, Mr. Davis, taught Marcus exercises to help him focus and calm his body when it felt too big for the classroom. Progress was slow. Some days Marcus still came home frustrated, still threw his backpack across the room and said he was too stupid for school. Those days I held him and reminded him what Dr. Patel said. His brain wasn't broken, it just learned differently. And Ms. Reese would follow up with a note or a phone call. Rough day, but he recovered. We read together at lunch. He laughed at the funny parts. That's progress. By March, I started seeing changes. Marcus could read simple books on his own. He'd sound out words slowly, carefully, his finger tracing each line. And when he finished a page, he'd look up at me with pride that broke my heart and put it back together. He started doing his homework with less resistance. He made a friend a quiet boy named Amir, who also loved dinosaurs, and also had an IEP. In April, Ms. Reese called me. "Mrs. Jenkins," she said, "do you have a minute? I have something to show you." I met her after school again. She pulled out a piece of paper essay Marcus had written, painstakingly, about what he wanted to be when he grew up. "When I grow up, I want to be a paleontologist," he had written in his careful, crooked handwriting. Paleontologists study dinosaur bones and learn about animals that lived a long time ago. I think dinosaurs are cool because they were so big and strong, but they all died and now we can only see their bones. I want to find bones and put them together, like a puzzle, and tell people what dinosaurs were like. Ms. Reese says I am good at puzzles. She says my brain sees things other people miss. I think that is good for finding bones. Also, my grandma says I can be anything if I work hard. She works hard every day. When I grow up, I want to make her proud. I read it 3 times. Then I cried for the 3rd time in Ms. Reese's classroom. Except this time they were different tears. Relief, pride, gratitude so big it didn't fit inside my chest. "Mrs. Jenkins," Ms. Reese said softly, "he's going to be okay. He's going to more than okay. You've given him the foundation. Now we're just building on it." End of the school year came faster than I expected. The last day I went to pick Marcus up and Ms. Reese stopped me in the hallway. "Can you come to the classroom for a minute?" she asked. I followed her, confused. The room was empty except for Marcus, who was grinning in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Grandma?" he said. "Look." He held up a certificate. Most Improved Reader, 3rd grade. "We voted," Ms. Reese explained. The class agreed unanimously. Marcus worked harder than anyone this year. Marcus hugged me and I hugged him back. This boy who I'd been so afraid I couldn't help. Who I'd been so afraid would slip through the cracks the way his mother had. And then Miss Reese handed me something else, an envelope. Open it later, she said. Inside was a card, on the front to an extraordinary grandmother. Side, in Ms. Reese's looping handwriting, Mrs. Jenkins. You have been raising Marcus while working nights, navigating systems that don't make it easy, and fighting for a child who wasn't even supposed to be your responsibility. You did this with grace, with love, and with a strength that humbles me. Marcus is thriving not in spite of you, but because of you. Thank you for trusting me to be part of his village. You are exactly the kind of parent and grandmother every teacher hopes to work with. With deep respect and admiration, Ms. Reese. I read that card in my car, and then I cried for an hour. Not sad tears, not even entirely happy tears. Just tears that come when you've been holding your breath for so long and someone finally gives you permission to exhale. That summer, Marcus and I went to the Natural History Museum. We couldn't afford much, but they had a free community day, and we went. He stood in front of the dinosaur skeletons, his eyes huge, and whispered, "Grandma, I'm going to do this. I'm going to find bones." "I know you are, baby," I said. And I believed it. Keisha got out of prison in August. Early release for good behavior. She's living in a halfway house, working at a grocery store, attending NA meetings. She's trying. It's fragile and uncertain, but she's trying. Marcus sees her once a week, supervised visits that leave him happy and confused in equal measure. Is Mama going to live with us again? He asked me after one visit. I don't know, I said honestly, but no matter what happens, you're safe. You're loved, and you're going to keep growing, keep learning, keep being exactly who you are. Fourth grade started in September with a new teacher, Mr. Thompson. I was nervous. Would he understand Marcus? Would he honor the IEP? Would we have to fight again? But at the first parent-teacher conference, Mr. Thompson said, "Mrs. Jenkins." Ms. Reese left me detailed notes about Marcus. I've read his IEP. I've met with Mrs. Kim and Mr. Davis. We're going to continue everything that's working. And if something isn't working, we'll adjust. Marcus is in good hands. I cried again. I'm starting to think I'm just a crier now. Ms. Reese moved to a different school this year. She texted me once, "How's Marcus doing?" I sent her a picture of him reading a chapter book at the kitchen table, his tongue sticking out in concentration. She wrote back, "I knew he could do it. Tell him I'm proud. And tell yourself the same thing." It's November now. Marcus is 9. He still has hard days when the words won't make sense, when his body won't sit still, when the world feels too loud. But he also has good days. Days when he finishes his homework without tears. Days when he teaches Amir facts about velociraptors. Days when he tells me about his day without me having to pry it out of him. Last week, he came home with a picture he'd drawn in art class. A T-Rex standing next to a woman. The woman was holding the dinosaur's tiny hand. At the bottom, in his careful handwriting, "Me and Grandma." "That's us," he explained. "You're holding my hand because I'm scared sometimes. But you don't let go." I hung it on the refrigerator next to his most improved reader certificate. And the card from Ms. Reese, my little gallery of proof that we're going to be okay, people. Ask me sometimes if I resent raising Marcus. If I'm angry at Keisha for putting this on me. If I wish I could retire, travel, do all the things 65-year-olds are supposed to do. The answer is complicated. Yes, I'm tired. Yes, I worry about money. Yes, there are days I mourn the life I thought I'd have. But resentment. No, this child is my second chance. Not to fix what went wrong with Keisha. I've learned you can't fix another person, but to show up to love without Townsend, to be the steady thing in a world that keeps shifting. And Ms. Reese, she gave me something I didn't know I needed. Hope. Not the naive kind that ignores reality. The kind that looks at a struggling child and says, "He can do this, and here's how we'll help him." It's the kind that sees a grandmother drowning in responsibility and says, "You're not alone." The kind that understands the system is broken, but refuses to let that be an excuse not to try. When Ms. Reese first said, "We need to talk," my stomach dropped because I expected the worst. I expected judgment. I expected another professional telling me I wasn't doing enough, that Marcus was too far behind, that maybe I was too old to be doing this. What I got instead was a teacher who said, "Your grandson is special. You are doing an incredible job, and I'm going to help." That sentence made me cry for an hour because it was the first time in 3 years someone had told me I was doing okay. The first time someone offered to carry some of the weight instead of adding to it. The first time I felt seen not as a problem to be managed, but as a person to be supported. Ms. Reese didn't save Marcus. I didn't save Marcus. We're saving him together, me and her and Mrs. Kim and Mr. Davis, and now Mr. Thompson and every person who chooses to see him as a whole child worthy of investment. That's the thing about raising kids in hard circumstances. You can't do it alone. You need a village. And sometimes the village starts with one teacher who says, "We need to talk," and then follows it with, "Here's how I can help. Okay, we'll be okay." Not because his life is easy, it's not. Not because everything is fixed, it's not. But because he has people who believe in him. People who understand that different doesn't mean less. People who are willing to meet him where he is and walk beside him to where he's going. And me, I'll keep working nights. I'll keep checking homework. I'll keep reading to him before bed. I'll keep showing up tired and imperfect and doing my best. Because that's what love looks like in the real world. Not grand gestures. Just steady presence. Just holding a small hand and not letting go, even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared, Ms. Reese taught me that teachers can change lives. But she also taught me that grandmothers can too. That showing up matters. That exhaustion doesn't disqualify you from being enough. That the work is hard, but the child is worth it. So when people ask me what Marcus's teacher said that made me cry for an hour, I tell them the truth. She said, "We need to talk." And then she told me my grandson was special. She told me I was doing an incredible job. She told me I wasn't alone. And then she proved it by doing something no one else had done. She helped. Those words, that kindness, that action, they didn't fix everything. But they gave me what I needed most, the strength to keep going. And sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything.